and there's a lot of things that can go into that, but I think it doesn't matter now whether you're a small market club, a big market club. You have to be a sustainable product, to have a winning team, and to sustain it year over year in and year out. You have to develop players from within. A major focus for us as we begin is going to be on signing and developing players out of our Latin American Academy. We're going to put a ton of resources there. I've hired a new Latin American director, Euclides Rojas. A lot of my focus right now is going into making sure that it can't just be all through the domestic draft. We need to have strong players coming out of our academy. Beyond that, I really think that it's that blend of modern analytics, data, technology, with good people too. Like, the people part is way more important than the data and the technology.
Gentlemen, we have the technology. Better than just before. Better, stronger, faster.
The 20, I developed a curveball because my plan with that was getting a breaking ball that was going to pair with my fastball that up to that point had good ride. Metrically, it was a good fastball with vertical break when it comes to vertical break.
Sure.
So my plan was to get a breaking ball that pairs off of that well, and then still keep my changeup as my best out pitch. And so I developed that over the 19 off season, and then COVID hit, and basically I just had a ton of time on my hands, and I figured, hey, let's get a fourth pitch because that's only going to help. So it was a slider then.
All right, welcome to Tigers Radio Pod here at MotorCityBengals.com. I'm Rogelio Castiano, alongside me is Uper and Chris Brown. You can find us on Spotify, iTunes, iHeartMedia, and Stitcher. And if you're on Spotify, there's a feature now called the follow button, and you can follow along. So every time a new show posts up, it's in there. So the audio clips are courtesy of the Word on Woodward, as Art Regner and his host, I'm just drawing a blank on it, I believe it's Heather, talk to Ryan Darko, the new vice president of player personnel. And also the audio from the pitcher side was Bo Brisky, who was on Locked on Tigers. So the audio is courtesy of Locked on Tigers. And Scott, I had a fun conversation with Scott. He was like, just making sure, I just want to let you know, they're going to put some of your audio on the podcast. He said that was cool. And it's always give attribution. I thought, honestly, if you get a chance, if you like our podcast, can't get enough, I highly recommend listening to that interview with Scott and Bo Brisky, who was the Tiger minor league pitcher of the year, had some really good numbers. And again, it's just one of those things where the podcast community, you got to plug along and what have you. So, but tonight we're going to talk about what really was talked about on Tigers Twitter, Tucker Barnhart, not Nick Castellanos, which I'll get on that rant in a second. And free agency, of course, the hot stove is kicking up. We get some really good questions about the labor union unity, what have you. So the offseason's fully began. But first, gentlemen, the Tucker Barnhart trade caught us all off guard. I'll start with you, Uper. So what were you doing when that trade occurred?
Yesterday, I was at work. It was watching some kids hopefully not beat each other up. And I got that flash on my phone, and I was like, I need you guys to be quiet for a few minutes while I read this. No, but it was quite a surprise. I mean, first day of the Hot Stove League, and day after the World Series, and boom, they make a fairly, it's not a blockbuster trade, but it's a fairly significant trade. I mean, that's a guy, if he stays healthy, is going to probably start 110, 115 games next year, and is a pretty good player.
Yeah, we mentioned him on the podcast last week was Clay Soden, and he was one of the first things we talked about. Chris, what about you? What were you doing?
So I think that went down around 2 in the afternoon?
Yeah.
I think I was probably working. I was probably writing about Battlefield 2042, and then getting ready to go get my son from school. But yeah, it was. I think, like a lot of people, it was mostly shocking that how quickly something like that happened. Because, as you said, we talked about it last week. It's not I mean, Barnhart was somebody that Tigers Twitter and Tigers baseball fans at large had kind of identified as, hey, this could be one of the best options from a really lousy crop of catchers this year. Not that there's ever really a great crop of catchers in free agency. I was thinking about that the other day. Like, every now and then there's somebody who's really good, like a Real Muto or a Grandal, but most of the time it's guys like Wilson Ramos. But yeah, it struck me. I think I joked with you that, like, they hadn't even wiped off all the champagne from the World Series trophy by the time the Tigers also said vomit too, I believe.
Yes.
I assume they partied pretty good. But yeah. So yeah, it was just kind of shocking how quickly it happened. And then, I think there was a level of excitement that I think was understandable, although, at the risk of being like another negative, having another negative take, I felt like it was a bit much at some time.
No, it's okay, because one of the things that really kind of made me laugh yesterday was, I'm going to say his name, Bob Page, who is around in Detroit circles, and I actually like Bob Page a lot. He just says what's on his mind. He does not care. He is very, very opinionated, and he will let you know it whether you like it or not. And he was saying that he's basically sick of this Pollyannis point of view or this optimistic point of view. And if it's like, dude, if you haven't read the website, if you haven't, especially Uper, myself, or Chris, I mean, for goodness sake, man. I mean, I'm not going to go off and swear on it, but read, listen to the podcast. You would know. I mean, it is a level. It caught us off guard. It was impressive because to me, I was running a data report for work. I'm still home, so I can't go anywhere. And so I'm just sitting there, and all of a sudden, somebody in our Slack channel, the Motor City Bengals Slack channel, and I think somebody by the way, Tigers Discord channel is for everybody. So please, if you are a Tigers fan, take advantage of it. We talk in there sometimes all day. Props to Steve. Props to Nacho Man. Is it not?
I'm eating nachos.
That guy rules. And those people keep the chat going. It's free. It doesn't cost you anything. We're not getting your private information because I don't care. Go in there. We talk Tigers all the time. Anyway, back to what I'm saying was, it caught us off guard. It caught everybody off guard because how aggressive it was. And then the argument that pursued was, well, look at his batting average.
We got to go. What did our friend Lee Panis said? Beyond batting average, right?
Oh, there you go. Yeah, his book. Yeah, so this is where one thing I kind of would like to get back to is things just being okay. Like, hey, that's an okay move.
Yeah.
And for me, this is my main argument was it was I definitely understand why people would get excited because it was unexpected. It was slightly creative, something we've been talking about Al Avila not being creative at all over the last few years. They went out and they identified the guy that they wanted. They went and got him, and they got ahead of anybody else by giving up a prospect. Nick Quintana, who we've seen in person. You saw him this year and in 2019. I only saw him in 2019. Not a great prospect by any means. Like, there's still some shine there because he was a second round pick, but he's under 200 batting average career in low A ball and some defensive issues. So it was basically like the Reds were just taking whatever they could to dump some salary. So I get the positive reaction on that side as my dog breaks out the squeaky toy again, right on time. But to me, it almost like basically it was just a competent move. And I don't want to get too excited about basic competency from a general manager. It's the sort of thing we should be expecting. They should look at the team and go, well, there's a huge glaring hole. Let's fill it with the best option available. And that's what we should expect from a general manager. And I think people have gotten used to the Tigers not really trying over the last 3 or 4 years. So anything that looks like it might be a decent move, we get excited about it. But this doesn't really move the needle all that much to me. And honestly, I think they probably would have gone after a catcher even if Jake Rogers hadn't gotten hurt. Because when you look at who they have, Jake Rogers, Eric Haas, and Greiner and Garneau, you have no idea what you're going to get from any of those guys, really. We had Rogers, Rogers is out for the next year, but they had him for what, 45 games this year or something like that, and he looked good, but it was a small sample. And Haas, was DFA'd twice and was awesome for about a month and a half, 2 months, and then came back down to earth. So the Tigers don't really know what they have there, but like I said, I understand people getting excited, but I think it's just, it's a solid move. Nothing to really get super excited about.
I think the thing that I took away after maybe the trade was an hour old, and you had a little time to let it breathe. I like the fact that, the team was $45 million under the league average payroll this year. And we all said the proof's in the pudding. When are they going to spend the money to get better? And one thing they did was they leveraged some payroll, $7.75 million, to make this move, to make the Everyday Ball Club better. And hopefully that's a sign that, some of the tap is turned on. And they are going to be aggressive this winter because they've said we're going to be aggressive. Well, again, that proof is in the pudding. But now they made a fairly aggressive move and they put a little money behind it. It's not huge money, but it's some money and something the Reds are willing to spend. So I think that was, to me, a little bit of light that I enjoyed seeing.
Yeah, and the thing is that, and Mitch said it pretty well, was the excitement was the fact that they got a player who can play at the major league level. And that's, to me, that's the most important thing, because we're doing the history on that trade. He, outside of technically the Javier Betancourt trade to Milwaukee, I mean, the biggest trade at that point he did with prospects with Luis Cessna and Chad Green to the Yankees for Justin Wilson. So it doesn't happen very often. I think that what I get excited, what element is, and what Chris just mentioned, the catcher market's not that good. You've seen today that Buster Posey is retiring. So, I mean, he was not going to go anywhere besides stay in San Francisco. But the point I'm trying to make is simply this. It is simple. It's a move. It's great, but there's more work to do. And that right there is the true testament. What Walter said is absolutely right, is that he didn't like hearing that this was possibly the top priority. However, you think with Al Avila, sometimes it's just word salad. And I think he means well. And I think sometimes he just gets overexcited. And I'm not going to criticize what he says at a press conference. It's the same argument that people made about, well, at the Little Caesars Arena, didn't have the Red Wing on the logo on top of the lights. Remember that? And everybody made such a big deal about it. It was not exactly like the picture. Same thing. I mean, Avila is a trained professional when it comes to baseball, what have you. Sometimes in the press, it's a little different, and that's okay. It's not the end of the world.
I was hopeful that he meant maybe that's our top priority among catchers.
Yeah, there you go.
Well, I think it's very possible that what he meant was this was the one thing that they had to get right. Like, who are the other left-handed hitting catching options out there? Are there any? Was Christian Vasquez maybe? Is he a lefty? I don't know if he's a lefty or not. I
don't think so.
So I mean, that's the thing. Like, Barnhart is he's not going to play against left-handed pitching. This is a strict platoon situation, and it's kind of an interesting platoon with him and Haas now. Haas batting against lefties, and select maybe soft tossing right-handers or guys who don't have breaking balls or whatever. Because Barnhart's like a career 190 hitter against lefties, a 40 WRC plus. That's like 10% worse than Grayson Grider overall. But there were no other options, so I could see him saying like getting Barnhart was one of their main priorities because there's nobody else out there like that. Whereas a shortstop, you got Correa, you got Seager, you got Simeon, you got Baez if you have to. You could stick with Kreidler if you need to. Like they have a lot of different options there, but Barnhart was kind of it when it came to catcher. And in that regard, you do have to give them credit for identifying who they needed to get and going out and get them for cheap.
Yeah, and not to mention too, if you look at the grand scheme of things with Jake Rogers, there's no guarantee he's going to be the same Jake Rogers coming back from surgery because
absolutely
it's beyond the medical science of us three understanding this together. So it's to me, I mean, I'm not a doctor or anything, and the thing ultimately, they just got it done and they move on. And I mean, Avila was saying that they're already calling free agency and free agents, what have you. And we'll get to that in the question part later because we had some really good questions involving that. But I mean, the market today was that people were talking about Nick Castellanos' option in the outfield free agent market is just getting more and more stacked. But again, let me just say this. No one was talking about him coming back to Detroit. Nobody. Period. Okay. It's a foregone conclusion. His time here ended roughly. No, I mean, people want him back. And the thing about nostalgia, and I talked about this in an article recently. Everybody loves to trade in nostalgia. People, well, nostalgia is like a warm blanket around you. It comforts you when you think about the good old days. You think about, which is why you see things like Saved by the Bell and all these shows that came back in the 90s doing well now because people want their Fuller House and people want that nostalgia. They love that. They love to think about the good old days. But as I recall, people bitched and moaned about Nick Castellanos in the outfield constantly. I don't remember this entire. And Chris and I remember Chris, specifically Chris, and you were talking about Nick Castellanos' defense before, and that, yeah, maybe he'll go to Miami. That's a good one, Walter. But honestly, everybody, it's to me, nostalgia makes you remember things completely different than what they were. If I think about, for example, I always wax poetic about my 1993 Escort station wagon I had in the late 90s. Okay, I love that car. I put over 200,000 miles on it. You could take the key out and leave it running. It was 3 different colors, but I got rid of it. The reality, it was a piece of crap. It was a piece of crap because towards the end, my alignment was so bad I had to try to drive like this at one point. But I remember it fondly because it was such a durable car. So nostalgia, you have to take the nostalgia factor away with that. I mean, Tiger fans want JV back. I'd rather them spend the money elsewhere. That's just me. It would be a good story. And I know we've talked about this numerous times already. But anyway, nostalgia is an MFR.
Well, yeah, and it's also should be noted that Nick Castellanos never hit. I mean, he was a good hitter, a very good hitter, you could argue, but he never hit in Detroit like he hit this year, or like he hit for the Cubs after he got traded. And I don't necessarily think that what he did this year is super sustainable in the future. It could be, but he's not without his warts, and he's not. What he opt out of? What was he going to make? 17 million, 16 million?
Yeah.
He's probably going to be looking for like 20 million a year, and that's just not. I don't think that would be a terribly smart move for you. And it is interesting with nostalgia. I was doing a Royals preview right before we went on the air, and it strikes me, and I know you've made this comparison before about just the Royals are kind of maybe not necessarily very similar to the Tigers situation, but it seems like their development as teams is along the same track.
Yeah.
It occurred to me that Royals fans are probably clamoring to get Zach Greinke back the way Tigers fans want Justin Verlander back. Greinke, who began his career there in the Royals and won his Cy Young there, and it's the same sort of situation where you bring in the old veteran to help teach the young guys. It's a little bit different though, but anyway, yeah, nostalgia. Bring back all our old players. Bring back Scherzer and Verlander and Avi Garcia and Jose Iglesias, and let's just try it again.
Nice.
Yeah, or let's bring back. My favorite is the Don Kelly nostalgia people who just love the days of Don Kelly, and Donnie Kelly, baby, awesome, what have you. But it's just so. I guess because I'm older, I feel like the old man yelling at a cloud about that sometimes. But my nostalgia really stems from the days of Debbie Cruz and Damian Easley. But I don't sit there and go, yeah, I miss those late 90 Tiger teams that had ERAs above 5. Those glory days are really in my mind about that. Get out of here. Anyway. But I get back real quick before we move on to the free agent discussion. One of the things I did like about the Ryan Garco interview is that he really Porcello, Mitch, yeah, right there. There's another one right there. Everyone loves that too. But I love what Garco said he said something that stuck out to me in the interview. You can find it on Detroit Tigers YouTube channel. He said that if a batter's batting 220 low A, there's a reason why. And I'm paraphrasing what he said, but it stuck out. He's like, we're gonna have to do something about it. And he emphasized walking more and then pitchers getting more strikeouts. Things that to you and I, Chris, we talked about this numerous times on the minor league stuff before, even when we did the live broadcast, is a in terms of prospects, what have you, it's common to us. It's common sense, and just system wide everywhere else, it's just a good thing. But I don't know. I like the way he approached the interview, and the fact that they're trying to develop Latin players is something huge. And you and I and you, we talked about this numerous times. To me, that's important, and it's vital to this team getting better.
Yeah, I did not see that interview until the first I heard of it was when you played that audio, and I liked everything I heard in that little clip you played, particularly. And like I said, it's something that we would harp on, and you just said it. The production they've been getting from Latin America is not up to what it needs to be for them to compete annually. We've seen other teams consistently bring guys from Venezuela, the Dominican Republic, Cuba, and turn them into quality players. And the Tigers just haven't done that. So that's a huge area of emphasis for me, I think. And for him, as he was saying, it's kind of the buzzword of being like a sustainable player development system, being able to weather losses in free agency or injuries and things like that because you have the quality minor league depth. So yeah, I like the way he's talking. Now I want to see them put it into action. It's hard not to be excited about all the moves they've made just based on kind of the pedigree of these guys. Or basically them coming from the Dodgers. Like, well, that works for me because the Dodgers are the gold standard.
Yeah, I mean, they've done a complete purge and brought in these new names from successful organizations. There's no reason why any team doesn't have a pipeline in the Caribbean, because mostly it's about work and effort, and building the relationships to get the right players pointed in your club's direction, and of course having the money to back it up. And they just haven't had that over the years. It's been stunning. Like when they've had Cabrera and Carlos Guillen in their system, how they weren't dominating in Venezuela, marketing those two guys. That always kind of mystified me.
Yeah, especially because, I mean, the one thing about the Tigers in terms of promoting the Latin players in the market, in their system, really, it's been kind of relatively low key because they've always drafted high recently. But if I was them, I mean, right now I'd be touting the fact that Gregory Soto is an all-star. You have Joe Jimenez, really on that they're touted, and they should tout that a little bit more. And to me, that's the most important thing to go and say, look, we've had 2 all-star relievers. Have we had any infielders? Not since, I mean, you could talk about Omar Infante, Ramon Santiago, Devi Cruz. That's really about it in terms of, I mean, Suarez, of course, before they traded him, but again, no one knew what he was going to be. And we did get a couple questions in there in our chat. Noah Stevens on YouTube. You think the Cubs will trade Jason Hayward for more prospects? And then we did a question about most likely shortstop scenario, which we'll get to a little later because we did get a question about that. And Walter asked if there's any free agent relievers you all have on your radars. And I did an article about that at Motor City Bengals. And so those are guys. And there was something, too, that people were like, well, Elaville said that he's not going to address that. And I mentioned that in the article. And they could go within, like, with guys like Angel De Jesus or re-signing Willie Peralta, who I think is better in the bullpen because his stuff is 1, 2 through the order is great. But third time through the order, and especially getting a little older, I don't know if that's going to play out the same way. He did develop a split finger fastball, which I think would be a good play for a 6th or 7th inning guy, or a guy who can go from the 5th to the 8th, what have you, if he's doing really well. So, but the Cubs question, really, if the Cubs are going to continue to dumping salary ways, it makes sense for them to trade and just get prospects.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure they'd love to get rid of Jason Hayward. I don't know if they can. Isn't that the issue there? I mean, he's basically a glove first outfielder now, with who's making what, $20 million a year?
Yeah.
Is it even more than that? I haven't checked it. Let's see. What did he do this year? He hit it's a 68 WRC plus this year from Jason Hayward. Hit 214 with 8 home runs.
Yeah. Well.
And then let's see, the 5 seasons before with Chicago, he's been a 1 WAR, 1.1 WAR, 2.1 WAR, 1.7 WAR, 1.9 WAR, 0.3 WAR.
Those are numbers you can find on the street.
Yeah, absolutely. So,
I think they pretty much they moved everybody they were going to move last year, with maybe the exception of Kyle Hendrick.
Well, and Contreras, I thought maybe the catcher. Yeah. But yeah, I don't think they could I bet you if you went on baseball trade values, Jason Hayward would have a pretty negative value. Not that that's necessarily all the truth. I think when the Tigers traded for Barnhart, I decided to look that up, and according to baseball trade values, the Reds won that trade. Nick Quintana was worth 2.5 whatever, and Barnhart was 0.0, which is silly, but that site's just kind of for fun and for general ideas.
Yeah, there's some really good stuff on there. And as far as Quintana, when I saw him in Lakeland this year, the one thing that was still evident was his overswinging. Even with the strike zone that's automated down there, it seemed like he was still overswinging everything. Like when we first saw him in West Michigan in 2019. Defensively, he wasn't bad either. And there was talk about those wrist issues that were causing some of the some of the problems. But in all honesty, I saw a guy who's lost the plate, and what they developed him in the second round was the 2018 draft. Chris, was that or the 2019 draft?
He was 2019.
Yeah.
He was after Riley Green.
That's right.
Yeah, it's the power of first impressions, man. We've talked about it many times. But we went out and saw him strike out 4 times in 4 at bats the first time we saw him play, and they were not competitive at bats. They were like 3-4 pitch. Maybe one of them went to a full count, but. And yeah, that was basically his whole experience there in West Michigan back in 2019, to the point that they sent him back down to Connecticut, right?
Yeah, they sent him down to Connecticut. Wow. And when Chris, we saw him 2 more times that season. So it wasn't, and we've talked about this, and I got to give credit to Chipman about this. James Chipman has taught us, and I've learned a lot this also too from Jeff Pontus, who, by the way, congratulations to him. He's the new writer over at Baseball America. I want to give him a shout out because Jeff is a good people, and I've learned
former
a lot
podcast guest.
Yeah, former podcast guest. And speaking of Baseball America, there might be another guest coming next week, but I'm not going to say anything because I'm superstitious about that. But yeah, anyway, so
Mr. Met,
that's all we're going to say about that. But no, it's one of those things where I think that you need to look at a prospect 3 or 4 times before making a judgment. And then I talked to Jay Markle about this from Bless You Boys, and he was one of the last people to defend Nick Quintana, and I just couldn't do it after a while. It's like I saw what I saw, and again, I'm a chubby Hispanic dude, but I'm telling you this right now, we're all in agreement about it.
Not sure what being chubby or Hispanic has to do with anything, but
I don't know. I'm just saying, like I'm
a chubby white guy, but
no, what I'm saying is I'm not a professional scout. I just see from what I can see. You know what I mean? So.
No, I get what you think. Yeah, I mean, it's always important. This is why area scouts go to games throughout the entire season. They keep an eye on guys, see if the progress that they made. You think about J.J. Blade, who was, what did he go, 4th overall in 2019?
Yep. Yeah.
So 1 pick ahead of Riley Green. Had a college performer with Vanderbilt, great hitter. Had a really, really rough year this season for the Marlins, to the point where people were like, I don't know, man, he might not. And then the last couple of weeks, he changed something with his hands and seemed to pick it up, and he's been hitting well in the AFL. That doesn't tell you a ton, but it's one of those things where you got to keep your eye on prospects for longer than just a few games. But there are certain things you could pick out pretty quickly that let you know, like, hey, this could be an issue. And Nick Quintana almost immediately looked to me like he had a grooved swing. Like, basically, if you're going to pump him fastballs down the middle, he can hit them pretty hard. But if you're moving it around the zone or putting a wrinkle on the ball, he had trouble. And it's not that he doesn't have like a good eye. He'll walk at a decent clip, but he couldn't manipulate the barrel. And that's something that you can't. I mean, I think that was one of the issues with Blade, and moving his hands maybe allowed him to do that a little bit more. But there's only so much you can change with a player like that. So, yeah.
Yeah, especially because we look at guys in the Tiger system who've made adjustments. We saw Eric De La Rosa go from overswinging and just be too aggressive to be a more patient hitter, going back on the ball and starting hitting the ball in all fields. Especially, I saw in Lakeland, he was a completely different hitter than what little video we saw of him at Connecticut and at West Michigan the first time, because he was there in 2019 and he looked like a completely different hitter. And so it's the same principle applies for Ryan Kreidler as well. And if you look at, heading into this season, Ryan Kreidler was literally, when we were putting up the board together, we saw him that he was talked about being in the fight of the camp, and we saw that, and we were like, "Oh, that's interesting," because he didn't seem to make any waves beforehand, and all of a sudden he came up out of nowhere. And so that's the stuff you got to pay attention to. You guys pay attention to Wilmer Flores right now in the AFL, who's pumping 95, 96. Travis Fernander, who I liked early on at West Michigan because I thought that he had a good movement on his fastball, and it seemed like he had just 2 pitches at the time and started to develop a third pitch down in Erie, and that's a guy who was drafted in the 32nd round. Wow. So, you know.
I thought it was the 36th round.
Oh, I think you're right, Chris. Yeah, I think it's, yeah.
Either way, I mean, anybody in the 30th round.
Rounds. I was gonna say, he doesn't even know which round it was. It's getting that late.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's yeah, your point is well taken. You gotta give these guys time, and like we're not closing the book on Nick Quintana by any means. I think there's a reason the Tigers were able to part with it. Basically, as we said, the Reds were either going to give up Barnhart for nothing and have to pay him $500,000, or they're going to trade him and you get anything in return. And so that tells you that in their mind, Nick Quintana was worth about $500,000.
They probably had a decent grade on him in their draft year, so they take a chance.
We talked about it. I think I mentioned it in that podcast with you and Jeff, where doing some random draft stuff, I stumbled across some pictures of the Oakland A's draft room or draft board from that year, and they had Quintana in there, in the top 40.
Yeah,
which was super fun to be able to see that and look at hey, who do they have there and there and there. So yeah, I mean, I think that there was definitely some buzz on him. It's not like the Tigers made a huge reach there. I there were some people who didn't like him, but yeah, and in the end, you could say, well, it worked out.
Yeah.
They flipped him for a major league player, which is good just about any time you can do it. So,
all right. So looking
what
at
was the other question about relievers?
Oh, relievers, yeah. Free agent relievers we had on our radars. And
for me, it's Raisel Iglesias.
Ooh.
I don't know how expensive that'll get, but if there's enough relievers out there, maybe that drives the market down slightly. Boy, that's a pitcher I like. I really do. Doesn't walk a lot of guys. He can go 4 or 5 outs. Whether he's pitching the ninth or pitching somewhere, I don't care where you pitch him. But I like that pitcher. He gives up a few homers, but he doesn't walk anybody, so they're all solo shots. So that's not so bad.
Yeah, now, Rogelio, you did the piece you talked about. You mentioned, 4 or 5 relievers in there?
Yeah, so I mentioned Corey Nabel, the former Tiger who was spending time in the Dodgers. He only pitched in 25 innings this year because he had a right lat strain, I believe it was, and so he was out for a good part of the season. But he pitched 25 innings. He was very effective. I thought, again, what I mentioned earlier about Willie Peralta, the other one I mentioned was because of lack of lefties, and Derek Holland declared free agency. Mm-hmm. So I was thinking about Aaron Loop, who I remember him more in Toronto than I do as a Met, but he had really good numbers for New York, and I thought his delivery style would be something that you could see playing with here. And then my favorite one is Michael Gibbons, who was in Colorado, that traded to the Reds, and I thought that his stuff is really good. He's got a good fastball. Mm-hmm. He's got kind of a unorthodox delivery somewhat unorthodox for a right-hander. And again, the reason why I like his stuff too is because it plays into the backup closer role just in case something happens to Fulmer or Soto, because he has experience. He closed in 8 games this year for Cincinnati, and he pitched in Colorado, and kudos to him. He put up some decent numbers in Colorado, all things considering. And I know his whip is he gives you a slight pause, but still, it could be maybe something that I'm not saying Chris Fetter is a cure-all of everything, but could look at it and maybe think about it. But Gibbons, to me, with that mid-90s fastball, I think there's so much upside to it that, again, you have to fortify your bullpen. I'm sorry. Agree or disagree with me, I don't really care. To me, what the bullpen did this year is truly remarkable. But you can't say it's a set thing because injuries happen or whatever, and age happens. And so if they can get an arm that can help them and be an upgrade, by all means, go for it.
Yeah, I haven't really dug into the relievers too much. Mostly because in my head, I just don't picture the Tigers adding to the bullpen, but they probably will. I mean, teams always do. And then with relievers, it's always such a crapshoot. Mm-hmm. You don't know who's going to come up to be awesome this year or suck. but there are a couple Brads that I think are vaguely interesting. I like maybe take a look at Brad Boxberger. And what about Brad Hand? You know, like Brad Hand had a rough year, but he was pretty darn good for many years before that, and he's not that old.
Right.
You'd think you could, I think he's 32, 33, something like that. You'd think you can get something out of that. But these are situations where you could probably just kind of give those guys spring training invites or sign them to like a 1 year, $3 million deal. Like, this is not, you know, I like Raisel Iglesias, or if they want to, you know, go after somebody like that, but it doesn't feel like that's a priority to them to go out there and get like a real high leverage reliever.
Right.
But I don't know. Yeah, that's definitely one area where you can kind of go out and find some interesting players and tournament and stuff. Like we talked about before, like the Rays and the Brewers in particular seem to have these random 29-year-old dudes who were mechanics a year ago, and now they've got some weird thing where they're throwing from a funky angle or doing one thing that just makes it hard for hitters to square them up. And I don't know, maybe the Tigers will develop into one of those kinds of teams that just can get bullpen arms from anywhere.
Yeah, that would be awesome. And
Yes,
ideally, like I said, they have some options down in the minors that, I mean, we don't know what's going to happen to Alex Fado, which is going to be a starter or reliever. That is yet to be determined. And Michael makes a good point too. You can get relievers to the deadline. Absolutely. And so that could be the case too, where they might just wait till the deadline to strengthen up their bullpen a little bit. But the reason why I mention that is because you look at Chicago, the White Sox bullpen was pretty good, and they did they gave up quite a bit to make that happen, but still they fortified it at the trade deadline. But they also had a couple pieces in there, like the Tigers, similar to Tigers, that were ready to go. But I don't know, like I remember the Joe Smith debate a couple of years ago. Well, they're not going to pay him that kind of money, and you don't want to pay bullpen arms that expensive. And I get that because they need things like shortstop, which we'll talk about here in a second. But there's other things they're going to need that are take top priority, such as starting pitching. So the bullpen is something that I threw out there because I really believe that you still have to keep that in mind as you're building out the squad. If you're going to be a contender next year and you're going to go after Chicago, you're going to need an arm that can stop the White Sox. I mean, potentially Cleveland, or if it depends on what Cleveland does this offseason too. That's a team I'm looking forward to see what you're going to write about there, Chris, because Cleveland is a team that's kind of, I mean, they're going through a name change right now. They're going to be called the Guardians, but they're getting sued by the roller derby team, which, by the way, has a better logo. I don't know if you guys have seen. Have you guys seen the Guardians rollers derby logos? Yeah, take that up, Chris. If you can, share it on the screen. Yeah, pull that up because that logo is actually better than the one that Indians came up with.
All right, let's see.
So as you do that,
is it the? Yeah. All right, the green and blue one.
Yeah.
All right.
See if you can share that on the screen for people who are watching us on YouTube. Thank you for watching us on YouTube, by the way. We appreciate it. As we continue the season, by the way, for the rest of the month, I think maybe outside of Thanksgiving, of course, we're going to be taking off. We might do something small and insignificant on Wednesday, but that's about it. I think the rest of we'll keep going with podcasts, even with the off-season strike. Our off-season mode can be very unpredictable. So did you get it, Chris?
Let's see. Share screen. Select window.
Yeah, pick whatever window you have there.
All right.
See if it works. Oh, yeah, I see it. And well, yeah. Isn't that sweet? I know. Anybody on YouTube watching right now, does that look sweet to you? I know. I like that logo.
Yeah, I'm looking at.
In a way, doesn't it feel like if you look at it, Chris? Don't you feel
like those tank tops?
But don't you feel like the wing part right there, where the G is for the Guardians logo, the Cleveland one looks very similar to the wings on the helmet?
Yeah, I assume that's related to the statues, the Guardian statues.
Yes.
So in both cases, but yeah, I mean, it's not shocking that they're getting sued. There's a likeness there. I'll say that.
How they overlooked that is unbelievable. I thought they could get, didn't have that buttoned up before they made that announcement. It's shocking.
I'm gonna run and grab a drink real quick. Just a second. Right. Sorry.
No problem. And like I said, there's a lot of people who wanted the spiders, and I thought the spiders were some of the logos I seen for the spiders too was really well done. But apparently Cleveland did not want to be associated with arachnoids. What's
Yeah.
is arachnoids? They say,
Yeah,
arachnoids.
yeah,
And
yeah.
so, but yeah, I mean, we're getting some feedback right now. Walter agrees it's better for sure. Absolutely. I still think that is, especially the color scheme. It's hard to pull off that kind of green.
Yeah.
In that kind of teal. I mean, unless you're the San Jose Sharks, but
or the Seattle Kraken.
Oh yeah, the crack. Oh, nice.
Oh, nice.
There you go. Yeah.
What's cracking?
Yeah, what's cracking? Oh, dude, that jersey. The logo's kind of but the jersey, phenomenal.
Yeah.
Out of all the new jerseys that I've seen recently, I like the Kraken. It's unleash. I mean, you have Leslie, you have Liam Nielsen for the rest. Unleash the Kraken.
Unleash the Kraken.
Yeah, you can say that forever. So, but let's go into the free agent talk a little bit before we get to the questions, and we'll recap AFL action here in a second. But what I wanted to discuss was kind of the free agent market. What's out there in terms of, and we talked about catchers earlier. For example, it's what in terms of like a not very young free agent market when it comes to catchers. So some names real quick. I'm not going to go through all of them, but you have Jeff Mathis, Stephen Voigt, Jan Gomes, Christian Valka, that's a club option. Kurt Suzuki, Chance Sisco, so some names, and then you go to first baseman. Of course, the Braves are going to re-sign Freddie Freeman. He's going to be a Brave for life. So there's no. We're not going to do an article. Oh, what if Freddie Freeman? No, it's not going to happen. Brandon Belt, Yuri Gurriel, who won the American League batting champion, which kind of like the most quietest thing. We have Cuban batting league champion, and we have a Cuban MVP in Jorge Soler, who, by the way, if anybody remembers the 2019 Tiger season, he was the biggest Tiger killer. 6 home runs at Comerica.
Yeah.
Yes, 6 home runs. He was always just, and I think there's a game where he drove in like 7 runs or 5. No, I think it was like 5 or 6 runs in one game. But congratulations to Soler, who had a monster. That was a shot that hit I think it was an apartment or went out of the Root Stadium, right?
Yeah, went over the train tracks and into like there's like a little foresty wooded pavilion over there. Yeah, no, he had a monster World Series. It's goes to show you again one of the strange things. He was literally we both, maybe all three of us, mentioned him in our good, bad, and ugly segments this year, as
Sure.
he was literally the worst player in baseball by WAR when the Royals traded him to the Braves. He was like a -1.5 WAR, and he turned around, and that's one of the most interesting things about the Braves title run was how they completely remade their outfield on the fly.
And all with kind of middling guys.
Yeah.
And they went like basically 4 for 4 in
Yeah.
players who turned it around.
Yeah, that's what it's one of those fun things about baseball, man, where the Astros had one of the best offenses of the last 20 years this year. It wasn't the best Astros offense in the last few years, but it was still by team WRC plus it was 116, which is like the top 20 in the last few decades. And they went out there and did nothing. I think they slugged under 300, I think, in the
2 homers.
Yeah, so it's just a weird thing. And did the Tigers go 5-1 against Houston this year, or 4-2? Either way, they beat them more than they lost, and it's just one of those weird things where like just get to the playoffs and anything can happen. If you're the hot team with the right time, who knows?
Yep.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, the Braves are an 88-win team and didn't have Ronald Acuna, and they won a World Series. I mean, it's no predicting.
Yeah, I know there's some people out there who were upset the Braves won, and then it was like the 06 Cardinal kind of situation. But in reality, the Braves on paper, I think the Braves were better than they were on paper. I mean, they had good pitching all season long. Charlie Morton, we've talked about him numerous times. He had really good numbers throughout the season. And for the Braves, for the first time that I can recall, they did a trade deadline move that worked out and actually panned out, because they've done stuff like this before when they were contending all the time in the 90s, and it never really seemed. I mean, outside of Fred McGriff, of course, that was a trade that panned out for them.
Yeah,
long term. I mean, that was a trade that kept going, that helped them out. But in terms of that year, I mean, 95, I'm trying to think of that. I can remember a significant trade, but I can't off the top of my head right now. But I really, really believe that the Braves, in terms of how they built the team through international signings and just getting it done in terms of even developing their own pitching, it's a testament to good team building. And I think that I don't know if they're going to repeat or not, because baseball, what I love about baseball is that you can't predict that kind of thing. It's not, dynasties are so hard to predict in baseball. I mean, if you look at it in the last 3 years, we have we have the Nationals. I mean, and Walter brings up a good point too. Would they have won with Acuna and no trades to replace him? We don't know. So what if?
I would like to think so, because Ronald Acuna is one of like the 3 or 4 best players in baseball. But you never, again, you don't know. He may be instead of Eddie Rosario going ham in the National League Championship Series, they have Acuna go out there and struggle for a series.
Exactly.
Or maybe the same thing with Soler in the World Series. You don't know. It's once you get to those small samples, anything can happen.
Yeah, especially because they had so many question marks coming this year about Swansby. They had questions about the third baseman. I'm drawing a blank on all of a sudden. Austin Riley. Yeah, Austin Riley. So, I mean, the only thing I can remember about the Braves beginning of the year that cracked me up is that the Travis Dermett or Travis who the Tigers traded for Shane Green for.
Demerit.
Demerit.
Yeah, Demerit was back in Atlanta, and that was my only little side joke for it. But all kidding aside, it was an impressive win, 7-0, and they won handily in Houston, a tough place to play. They didn't choke like the Falcons, and so I mean they didn't want to have that Atlanta labeled to them, and thankfully the ATL, as Outcast would say, got it done. And again, whether I know there's a lot of people who didn't like either team, but it was a good World Series to watch. I personally, I think, but I don't know what you guys thought about the World Series watching, but
I thought it was, really solid. I enjoyed it. I've been semi-following the Braves my whole life since they were on WTBS back in the 80s, and watched them through the 90s. So I had a little, we're talking about nostalgia. That's kind of how I felt last week. So I was rooting for the Braves. I had them winning in 6, and they won in 6. So a blind squirrel finds a nut once in a while.
I mean, as far as the Braves are concerned, in this area where I live, people know that Steve Avery went to Taylor Kennedy, and he led him to a state finals appearance, and he was not only a good baseball player, he was a good basketball player too. But Avery's squad, I actually knew the catcher too. I actually worked with the guy who caught him, and the reason why they lost is because he was out of innings. They had the innings at the time, and so, but Steve Avery, everybody in this area, in the Downriver, Michigan area, love Steve Avery and love the Atlanta Braves. I mean, there was just everybody in high school. Not a lot. When I was in high school, not a lot of Tiger fans. I was probably one of maybe 2 or 3 I can recall that was diehard. I wasn't going to change my allegiance. Now, when it comes to the Lions, it's a different story, but I'm not going to get into that because then Lions fans are just like, "Oh yeah, you're a fence rider." No, I gave up on that. I gave up on that narcotic 10 years ago. I'm done. I'm done. Honestly, if you like the Lions, cool. I'm not going to diss your fandom, but I look, I've already sat through a lot of bad baseball with the Tigers. I don't want to sit through football. Sorry. You know what I mean? Like when the team wins, I'll be like, that's cool. But I don't know. Anyway, not either there. But so in terms of free agents for first baseman, which I'm going to ask you guys a question about this too. Are the Tigers going to, because you and I have talked about this, Chris, and I think you would agree with this. We're not sure if Spencer Torkelson is going to be ready come spring.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe he might be ready in the middle of summer and what have you, but I don't know if he's going to be ready for spring training. Do the Tigers go after a bat like, let's say, Brad Miller? I know Anthony Rizzo, not going to happen. I'm not trying to be negative Nancy about that, but I'm just being realistic as possible. But you have Danny Santana, you have Todd Frazier, who I thought he retired. He's still around.
He was in the Olympics.
That's right. Yeah, good call. But should the Tigers go after a first baseman proper?
I'm going to say personally, that's why they brought Scope back. Stick him at first until Torkelson's ready, if that's what they're going to do. I personally think that the best place to spend money in free agency is at the top of the market. And so I wouldn't spend that first base money, obviously, but they should just get talent and get a good hitter. And I don't care where he plays. And then you make the pieces fit. So that's why I saw some stuff on Twitter today that the Tigers don't need outfielding. Who's really irreplaceable in the outfield? I don't think anybody is, other than you've got to save a spot for Riley Green. If you could make an upgrade there, then you can put Scope at first base and you're fine. For instance.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I don't picture them going after anybody who's strictly a first baseman. Like Brad Miller is vaguely interesting as a guy who can play in multiple positions. I think Mark Canha could theoretically play first base and the outfield and things like that. Like they could look to address it that way, but I do think that they'll probably just go ahead and stick with Scope / Cabrera until Torkelson's ready.
Yeah.
I mean, and if something crazy happens, Candelario is always an option at first again too. They have other people who might be able to play third. So, yeah, I don't think first base is a key for them. That was one of the things I actually had Brad Miller as a potential option for the Royals this offseason because they also have, as you wrote in his piece a couple months ago, the Royals have a couple very interesting young hitters, one of which is a first baseman, Nick Pratto, who might not be entirely ready,
Right.
but will probably be up playing regularly by the middle of the season. So they're another team that could go and maybe take one of those guys who can play first base, but also play the corner outfield.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, he put up some AAA numbers, but again, I always look at AAA numbers with a grain of salt to a certain extent because AAA is so much different than the regular, the major leagues. For example, there's always talk about Adrian Rodriguez to get called up, and look what numbers we're putting up. But again, you can ask. There's some people that we talked to that said he couldn't hit an off-speed pitch to save his life, and so it's a different. That jump from AAA to the major league level is so different, and so you can't, 375 with 30 home runs or whatever the numbers are in AAA. You kind of look at it and go, especially, I mean, now that it's not the specific Coast League, it's AAA West or whatever terminology. It used to be that you looked at those numbers in the Pacific Coast League teams like in Sacramento or San Jose or Las Vegas, where the altitude's different, and Las Vegas especially, and go, okay, well, you have to factor in ballpark factor definitely plays a role in that. So, but yeah, I mean, again, if they wanted to do something at first base, those are the names. Second base, of course, Marcus Semien, or he's gonna play shortstop, as Uper indicated. Josh, good old friend of the show. I'm just joking. Josh Harrison is out there. Matt Carpenter, Jason Kipnis, Jody Mercer. Yeah, Didi Strange Gordon, who played on. I saw him on 2 different AAA teams this year, Indianapolis and the Louisville, the AAA team for the Reds. So he was on, I think, 4 different AAA teams. I want to say he was in Milwaukee, he was in Nashville, Indianapolis, and I think Louisville. I'm pretty sure there's a 4th team in there. Maybe I can't remember, but either way.
I mean, did he even play second base anymore? Or I thought he was mostly an outfielder now, but
he played. I think we saw him at second for Louisville, Chris. I think I can't
possible,
remember.
I don't really remember either. But yeah, I mean, there are a handful of guys who can play second. I think Jonathan Villar was a guy that we mentioned on the show once or twice. Javier Baez played second base once Lindor came back, but I don't think that's another one where ideally just let Scope play second base and not worry about it. But again, there are these guys. Chris Taylor could play second base. These guys who could fill in at these various positions and then move around later. Yeah.
I love Chris. Chris Taylor is one of my favorite ones out there. I love to have Chris Taylor on this team because I think we're gonna not go in the outfield too much because we talked about that earlier. There's a couple bats in there that
Starling Marte,
which again we're up. Look, Starling Marte would be awesome. Trust me, it's one of my favorite bats. The Mark Canha is out there too.
Mm-hmm.
He put up a WAR 4.3. So
yeah, he's one of those interesting. I think I compared him to he's like a Robbie Grossman, but more versatile. At least has proven his versatility before. So he's definitely kind of one of those under the radar guys who might get paid a little bit more than people expect this year. I don't know. And then there have been some. I mentioned it in our Slack chat. I did not expect Yusei Kikuchi to turn down his option and become a free agent. Not that he's some great pitcher, and his results haven't been fantastic, but he's a lefty who sits at 95 now with his fastball. I think it's like,
Yeah.
I feel like you could do something with that. So he's kind of another interesting addition to the free agent market. There were 5 other guys who joined too, I think, right? There were like 6 guys who declined options.
Brett Gardner, Garcia in Milwaukee, Avisail, former Tiger.
Mm-hmm.
Also, what was the other one? And
Castiano.
Yep, of course.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, I mean, and with what happened? Okay, so the other one that I'm gonna either myself or Kellen's gonna do a write up about is John Gray. What the hell happened with that? Colorado just
basically, you can say what the hell happened. It was called. You can always say that about Colorado. What the hell happened?
Rocky Mountain High, Rocky Mountain High.
Whatever path making sense, whatever direction that is, they went the other way.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, you definitely got the feel that the Rockies front office was kind of barren to the point where like they maybe had enough people to keep things running functionally, but nobody to like think and plan for the future.
Yeah.
Like
they had those vacuums. They had the robot vacuums running around doing everything.
And I remember listening to the Kevin Goldstein's podcast, and they were talking to the beat reporter or a reporter who followed the Rockies, and he was talking about how strange a situation it is and how the owner there seems to care too much in all the worst ways. Like he's like, he wants to be friends with the players. It doesn't want to, upset people and like is kind of deluded into thinking that they're better than they are. Like all the worst possible things you want from an owner, other than being like super thrifty. But, yeah, so who knows what's going on there? I assume that he and Story are both going to be offered or tendered qualifying offers and turn them down, and the Rockies will get a couple draft picks in compensation.
Yeah, I mean it's weird. I still think it's weirder than the Mets situation right now. Everybody that been declining interviews in New York, and that's just a giant dumpster fire, and they're becoming a running joke. And so I don't know. I still think the Colorado situation is far worse because in New York. You can say what you will about the Mets and everything and make all the jokes, but it's still New York. I mean, people love baseball in New York. It's, we look at our traffic numbers for FanSided, which I'm not going to go into what exactly they are, but let's just say that both the Mets site and the Yankee site do quite well. Thank you very much. And so, yeah.
Well, yeah, and even though the National League East has somehow produced 2 of the last 3 World Series champions, I would much rather be there than in the National League West. They have the Dodgers and the Giants and the Padres,
who have very smart. They have smart front offices down there. I mean, although San Diego, you can kind of go, well, what the hell's going on in there? But they still have in terms of talent wise, they're still very good. Yeah, and then hiring Bob Melvin was a good one when we talked about that last week. That was.
Speaking of the Mets, apparently, did they decline to talk to him, or was it he? I think he said no thanks to the Mets.
Yeah,
so, another guy who. Not a GM instant, a manager was like, no, I'm good.
Yeah,
I'll stay out here.
Mm-hmm.
So. I mean, it's the West Coast. I mean, let's see. I mean, they're both expensive neighborhoods. What was it? They're in Flushing, right, or Long Island, or what? Mets.
The Mets are in Flushing, Queens, I believe.
Okay, so they're one of the boroughs over there. I'm not familiar with my New York geography, so pardon my ignorance, but. Still, I mean, the Mets.
Yeah, it's going to cost you money to live in New York or San Diego.
Yeah,
but
either way.
I think that MLB managers do okay in the salary department.
Yeah, they do just fine. So, but in terms of AFL action, Chris, is there anything before we get to the questions? I mean, I know Eric De La Rosa is still doing pretty well.
Yeah, the Tigers. It feels like they just feel undermanned or underrepresented out in the AFL now. I think De La Rosa went 1 for 6. And then I didn't see what he did today. 1 for 6 in the other game. You mentioned Wilmer Flores, who is throwing. He's got a good arm, but he's not producing results out there, which is not terribly surprising in a very hitter-friendly league for a kid who's thrown all of 60 innings in low A ball, to jump up to the Arizona Fall League is a pretty huge leap in competition. And we've seen other young, like Marco Luciano is one of the best young prospects in baseball, and I think he's struggling pretty badly in the AFL. So it's a big leap. But you go out there and you see Chavez Fernander. He's been pitching pretty well. Zach Hess has been getting knocked around a fair amount. And when you when they play at home, we get to look at the StatCast data. And with Hess, it continues. Like every time I look, I swear his velocity is down like another half a mile an hour. So he's sitting at like 93 with his fastball and touching almost 94. Just not, not. I feel like when he was at the alternate site a couple summers ago, he was like 97, 98. Yeah. And so something has changed there, and I don't know what exactly is going on. But and then Garrett Hill has been okay. I don't remember the last time. I think he started a couple days ago.
Yeah, that's great.
But yeah, there's not a ton of excitement with having lost Green and Torkelson and Kreidler. It's kind of tough.
There was an idea, by the way. We'll probably do this next week, and I think it was our friend of the show from went to the University of Toledo that mentioned that when the Dominican Winter League is streaming, we should do live commentary, and that's going to be a possibility. We just have to figure out when and all that stuff. But I love to do that. That's a good idea, and I think that'd be
fun.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I was looking. I was looking at that. The rosters out there, and I saw Adelin Rodriguez and Dawa Lugo, but not a lot of other, Tigers.
Drew Carlton.
Drew Carlton's out there.
Yeah, Drew Carlton's out there, and then there's a. Oh man, I drawn a blank. Gerson Moreno is out there too.
Oh, all right.
So Carlson again is pitching for the same team he pitched for last year, and I forgot, or I can't remember the name of the team right now, but I know it's the same team he was on last year. So Drew Carlton's back down there, and who knows? Maybe I know Candelario usually plays for the Toros, but we'll see if he does that again. As he's had a good year, and of course, people are still in shock that he's a top 10 third baseman. Again, some of the comments lately on some of our stories, I'm just like, what are you guys watching? Am I missing something here? And by the way, I just want to get this off my chest before we get to questions. It is not what if story I did on Alan Trammell. The reason why I wanted to mention this real quick is who cares? Well, who cares? He got in the Hall of Fame. Listen, if he wins that MVP in 87, he gets in the Hall of Fame quicker. Okay. The modern era baseball committee wasn't a thing. It didn't come into existence until a few years ago. He would have never gotten in the Hall of Fame or even gotten considered for it without this. So yeah, it does matter. Who cares? Get the hell out of here.
I didn't see that.
Some of the comments were just like, and it's just such a turd thing to say because, what about Lou Whitaker? Of course, Lou Whitaker should go in the Hall of Fame. If you read the book, which I have right here.
Books. By the way, now's a good time to point out that we're coming up on the 2-year anniversary of Rogelio and I appearing on Local 4 to talk about Lou Whitaker not getting into the Hall of Fame.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
You can find that video clip online.
Yeah,
it's got nearly 400 views.
Yes, and our beard is my beard is in full effect. Your beard was in full effect too. Listen, read this book, okay? Jay Jaffe does a good job of talking about Lou Whitaker and Alan Trammell because this happened before Alan Trammell got in the Hall of Fame. Okay, so if he would have he didn't even get 15% of the vote. Was my point. If he got an MVP, 40%, and I think it was Sarah, drawing a blank on her name. They mentioned 47% of people who got at least one MVP award got in the Hall of Fame. That would have helped Trammell. And it would have definitely helped him when Ozzie Smith and him came up at the same time. He had MVP. Ozzie Smith did not.
Well, and if Trammell gets in earlier, then all the hype that needed to go behind the movement to get Trammell in, maybe that shifts over to Whitaker.
Yeah,
and maybe he's in by now.
Well, and
come on, people, just use your imagination.
Well, just in general, you'll find that there's an awful lot of baseball writing that involves what if. What if, I don't know, the Tigers traded Casey Mize? Or
that's not gonna happen, Chris. That's not gonna happen.
What if they had gotten to the stadium and before the Nationals signed Juan Soto? Because
that's right.
Supposedly they're sitting outside in the next room as Soto is signing.
Well, and what if they were also supposedly one of the few teams that was in on Mike Trout back in was it 2009 instead took Jacob Turner? But no, I think, and I posted the other day, and Kurt was talking about it, how I took a snapshot of the Baseball America. They're rolling out their top tens right now, which includes when they do that, they always include their projected lineup 3 years down the road. So these 2022 top tens projected lineups for 2025. I always laugh at them because they're always kind of ridiculous. And I look back at the one from 2018 for 2021, and the only position they got right was Miguel Cabrera at DH. They had Michael Fulmer as their number one starter, and Bo Burrows as the closer, and all that good stuff. But all this theoretical stuff, mock drafts, trade proposals, a what if piece, a well researched, well thought out what if piece. It's all just fun.
Yes.
It's this. You don't have to. If you don't want to read it, don't read it. You don't have to just comment and go, "Who cares?" Like if you really don't care, then why don't you move on and do whatever? But people have issues.
Yeah, or I mean, there's certain baseball blogs out there too who just are snotty enough to act like they know everything, and they want to not talk to people, or you have to follow a certain curriculum to leave a comment, for Christ's sake. So there's a lot of things out there I don't understand. And look, if I write a bad article, I'll own up to it. I will own up to it all day long. I mean, again, did it exceed his guys' expectations? No, but I'm just, my whole point is this: read it. If you read it, cool. If you don't read it, I don't care. But don't leave this "who cares" comment. Think for a second. Think and just be a little more mind. I'm not going to your job going, "Hey, what are you doing? Oh, you suck at your job," or "Hey, I don't care. Who cares about you putting a car together?" or whatever the case may be. But it's tomato, whatever. It's fine. It's just I wanted to get that off my chest because I've gotten comments before that how to spell effect, and that was my fault. I'll take responsibility for that.
Yeah, I wouldn't then change that in one of the articles. Just kind of, and I try I always feel bad if I point if I say something about
you make it
either spelling or grammar. So I just put it in there. But I mean, we talked before. I got direct messages. My DMs are open, if you will.
Oh yeah.
And I got direct messages from people telling me that I wrote the worst article of all time, and they don't understand how I get paid and stuff like that. And it's totally fine. But people, hey, they have opinions too. So whatever.
Yeah, you're entitled to your opinion, and that's fine. It's just sometimes I just have to shake my head about it because some of these opinions are just like, okay, well, good for you. All right. So it's time for questions, Chris. We got some really good questions. One from the usual suspect, and we got some other ones today. So take it away.
I see we have 4 questions. At least those are the 4 that I saw. There might have been more, and I think we touched on most of them that were in the chat.
Yeah.
But a couple of them were similar. The first one I saw was from Steve Butts. This goes back to Barnhart. He said, as far as shots across the bow, go, the Tigers getting a jump on their competitors, targeting who they wanted and getting them is a very good sign for how this offseason could proceed, right? Saying like, hey, the Tigers being eager and going out and doing what they're, going out and get Barnhart suggests that they're going to be very active this offseason. I don't know. What do you guys think about that?
Well, this morning I wrote something. I called it "The Tigers are going hopefully through the Great Awakening," because we've been asleep for several years, and I think hopefully now is the season they have chosen to make that move forward. And I'm hopeful that the lockout doesn't stall what they're trying to do. And to me, that move, jumping in on the first day, was impressive because of the commitment of money and just the aggressiveness of getting the job done for a player that they needed if they intend to contend. So if there is a great awakening going on, that to me, it was a good sign.
Yeah, one thing, I don't necessarily look at it as a sign that they are going to spend a ton of money or immediately sign a bunch of guys. I think, as we mentioned earlier, it was a definite area of need, and there weren't many options, so they went out and got basically the one main option. The one thing that kind of interests me, and we all expect them or hope that they're going to sign kind of a big shortstop and maybe a starting pitcher or two, is and people have their favorites. Obviously, a lot of people want Correa and Verlander. A lot of people want Simeon or somebody like that. But there are options. So it could be a situation where the Tigers, I'm sure they have them ranked like who they want, but they may very well say, you know what, there are a lot of options this year. Let's let this play out and see if we can't get a better deal toward the end of the offseason. But I guess in general, it does make you feel better about them trying to contend that they were so active so early in such an interesting way. But I'm not entirely convinced that it's, it portends other really exciting stuff.
It's really going to be interesting if let's say there, everybody seems to think there's going to be a lockout on December 2nd, and let's say there is, and then everything gets frozen after that. Nothing happens. Does any team try to jump in this month and make a big move? And are there going to be players who are amenable to making the big move in November, even though both sides won't know the extent of the rules that they'll come back under post-lockout, whenever that is? I just wonder if some of the big name players would be interested in getting it done this month, because their money, that they're going to sign a big deal before the lockout, and they'll probably sign a big deal after the lockout. It really won't matter that much. But do you think there's anything to the fact that since they don't know where the luxury tax limit will be, will teams who are up near the luxury tax now, will they have some hesitancy to do anything in this month in November where the Tigers are nowhere near it? I mean, obviously. So if they were to make a big commitment now, they won't care too much what the luxury tax is set next year.
And that kind of leads into what Nick Splain's question was, which his question was kind of a broad question, but can you guys talk about the CBA negotiations and how it might affect the Tigers free agent positively or negatively? And you brought up a good point, and this ties back into what Steve Butts was saying. The answer to Steve Butts' question, yes, I think it does, because you notice the Royals are always kind of little. They have guys they specifically target within a price budget range. They're good, and then that's it. They don't mess around. The White Sox don't really need to add too much. The Twins are the dark horse in here. When I say that, it's because they've been tied to some big names, and Minnesota had a really disappointing 2021 season. They were expected to win division or contend for the division title, and they did not. So I think the Indians, the Indians are going to be frugal. It's just in their DNA, and that's what they're going to do. But I honestly think the Twins, a team like the Twins, for example, who also kind of waited last year late to get in the game, they might do the opposite thing and get in early. And I think Detroit, it'd be advantageous for Detroit, because I think for the negotiations, and you guys disagree or agree with me or not, I think there's a basis of a basic outline of what the players want to do and what the owners want to do. It's that stuff in the middle, the luxury tax you were talking about, Uper, where it's the little nitty-gritty stuff like that. It's where they're kind of drawing their in the sand a little bit. And then I think it's where Tony Clark is going to have to really either put on a united front, because right now, I mean, it looks like the owners have found ways to screw over the players consistently, whether it's imaginary collusion in the last couple of seasons where we saw movement. We didn't see movement until late, or whatever the case may be. I think that the players right now don't, for the first time, players want the upper hand, want the leverage, but I think there's a fair share of players out there who just want to get their money and call it a day. It's not like it was in the 90s when Donald Fuhrer was the head of the association. They were like an iron fist. They're like, nope, this is what we're doing. We're a united front. And it's been kind of quiet, to me, at least, from Tony Clark. Tony Clark is mad. He wants to get things done. I don't want to say mad, but he's feisty. But at the same time, honestly, I think if there's a lockout, it's just going to look bad for both sides, because look at the NHL. The NHL is back on ESPN. They are doing well. Donald Fuhrer is a player, so I'm just saying. And the NBA right now, a lot of people turn off on the NBA right now. So right now, essentially, it's football, and the NBA TV ratings have been dropping, but baseball ratings have been picking up. And there's a lot of things about baseball right now that's on the up and up. And you're going to trade all that goodwill. I mean, despite the fact that not a lot of people like the commissioner and just got to throw it all away. No, they got to get this done.
Well, I've been reading some speculation that I seems to think at least there's some groupthink out there that both sides know they maybe this can go into the spring, but it's unlikely that they'll miss a lot. It'll go into the season because neither side can feel like they can afford it.
Mm-hmm.
And there might be some truth to that. It just might be kind of a long slog of a winter, and then some kind of weird 10-day to 2-week free agency period, and then they get on the field. So it hard to say what that's going to shake out as.
Yeah, in general, we spent a lot of time talking about how this is going to be ugly in over the last 2 years. But for whatever reason, I've kind of come around to this thought that, like, hey, they really aren't that far apart in much of this stuff. I don't think. I feel like it's not going to be that disastrous of a. There's going to be a lockout. I don't know how long it's going to last, but I feel like they can get this done. I feel like there's not that. I mean, the players have a couple things that they can use as chips. Like, yeah, we'll give you more playoff teams or whatever. But I don't know, because we got 2 questions. You said the Nick Spillane one, and also Deadly Ninja Bees had a very similar question about, he said, does the uncertainty of the new CBA impact the Tigers at all? They have tons of payroll flexibility. Does a possible salary floor hurt? I don't think a salary floor is going to hurt the Tigers necessarily, because I do feel like they're going to spend enough money this year anyway in this offseason. But you mentioned a very interesting that I hadn't considered about, like, a team like the Yankees, who's pretty close to the luxury tax, I believe.
Yeah.
Would they go out and sign a $30 million contract right now, not knowing what the new, luxury tax will be? One thing that I was kind of considering, and this is something you don't really hear about in baseball that much, so I don't know what the rules are, but you certainly hear about in football, signing bonuses. Somebody signs an $80 million deal and like $40 million of it is a signing bonus or something like that. I could see a player theoretically before the lockout wanting to sign a deal and getting a big signing bonus. Like, again, I don't know what the rules are for that in baseball. Maybe they're not allowed, but just in case the labor strife turns out to be like a protracted issue,
yeah,
you go get yourself a $15-20 million signing bonus and you're fine. And so maybe now's the time to strike. I don't know. I would think most players would probably want to talk to as many teams as possible, get a bidding war going if they can. But sometimes it's better to just get your money now and worry about the rest later. So I do think that there will be some hesitancy to like, I don't expect to see a $350 million. Like, I don't think Correa is going to sign here before December. But it wouldn't shock me if we see half a dozen players sign deals.
I think if teams, if players are going to re-sign with teams, that could happen this month.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like if Correa decides to go back to Houston, which I think, by the way, is very possible. They got Greinke and Verlander coming off the payroll this year. That's $56 million they're freeing up. So if they want to make a big play and keep Correa around, that won't be very difficult for them.
Yeah, it's you do wonder if it's like a Scherzer situation where they offered a Correa a fraction of what Lindor got.
Yeah.
And then Correa went out and had his best season of his career. So he may be like, yeah, nice try, guys. But yeah, he's played there his whole entire career. I'm sure he's got a lot of connections to the organization, a lot of feeling there. And if they offer him a deal that he thinks is, fair, then I could see him signing for sure.
Because I think
it's my money and I need it now.
I still think
money and I need it now.
There you go.
It's my money and I need it now.
It's my money and I need it now.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, it's all good. I forgot what I was going to say, but I just think that
Correa spending money, signing back with the Astros.
Yeah, well, the Astros, that's it. I think they are, despite losing the World Series and despite losing Verlander, Greinke, and a couple others, I still think they have the core to continue contending if they keep Correa around. I could see them. I don't think this is the end of an era. Just the fact that they lost this World Series.
Yeah, you can do worse than Alex Bregman and Yordan Alvarez and the
Tucker.
young, Kyle Tucker, the young pitching that they have. They're in a pretty good spot right there. So even if they don't get Correa, I mean, would it shock us if they go and get Seager? Or I think Story is from Texas.
Yeah.
And they do have a pretty good shortstop prospect too. It's his name Pena, I think. But yeah, I don't know. I in general,
who do we think shows up in Detroit? Who plays shortstop for Detroit next year? What do we think?
That's a good question.
I mean,
it's on the table for November 3rd or 4th. What is it?
You know what? I'm putting my cards on the table because there is this consensus that people don't like Correa because he's a quote unquote cheater for the whole cheating scandal. And that's fair. To me, I personally think it's going to be. I don't think it's going to be Correa. Like in my heart of hearts, I want it to be Correa, but it's going to be maybe somebody like Marcus Semien. If Correa signs here, then great. And I'm not going to do any stupid dares because I mean, truthfully, I would like Correa here, but I just, like I said, there's, watching the interview I did in Spanish, what have you, about the pinstripes and all that stuff. He could be somebody that's just, calling a bluff out there and everything. And I think what Walter is correct about that too, is that save a little money. I'm on the Ryan Kryler trade, or Ryan Kryler should be the starting shortstop next year because he still needs another possible year. If he's doing well, then call him up and maybe he can play third, whatever the case is. But truthfully, right now, I think I'm going to go with Marcus Semien right now. I think it's going to be the shortstop. That's my opinion. Again, I want Correa. But at some time, my cynicism is kicking and going, no, right? They can't have nice things. No.
I think it could be Story. I think they could go out and get Trevor Story maybe for like a 6-year, $150 million deal, which is still plenty of money, but you're talking probably half, if not, 40% of what Correa gets, and something that's not exorbitant and that not going to cripple you in the future if things go wrong. Now, Story didn't have a very good season, and you got the concern about Coors Field, but I mean, he had an okay season. He was fine. But yeah, I still think it's going to cost $350 million to get Carlos Correa, and I just can't see the Tigers going that high. As much as we might like them to, I can't see it. So I think that they may be a finalist for Correa. They may try with a couple guys and lose out. But in the end, I feel like, for whatever reason, I picture Trevor Story, man in shortstop for him.
I like both of those. As I said earlier, I think the best money to spend is spending at the top of the market and get the premium guys. I think that's where your money is best concentrated, where things work out. I don't think they're going to get Correa either. I don't believe they have the gumption anymore to lay down a $300 million contract or anything like they did for Miguel Cabrera a few years ago with an owner who is no longer above ground. So I'm leaning Semien as well. I think that even at his age, 2 of the last 3 years, he has been a phenomenal player. 45 home runs this year, has picked up his defense considerably. People say the Blue Jays want to keep him, but man, the Blue Jays have a lot of commitments to take care of over time here with that young lineup once they start hitting arbitration and other things.
And Robbie Ray too.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. So I'm hoping it's Semien. And my other thing is, if it's not Semien, I don't know who they're going to get. Maybe none of them. Maybe Chris Taylor. But my money would go on Semien. I'd like to see 5 years, about $120 million, somewhere in that range.
I like this idea that, and Michael reminded me of it, and it was a good call there, Mike. So thanks for putting that in there in the YouTube talk about Tony Paul's idea about front loading a shortstop contract since the payroll is so low in the next few years, especially when Cabrera comes off the payroll. That's a very good idea. And one of the things that Tony Paul mentioned too, that I definitely enjoyed today was something along the lines of, what was it? He was saying something like just sign them all, make it happen, what have you. And I liked his enthusiasm about it, but it was just something along the lines of, there's something else he said too that I'm drawing a blank on all of a sudden, but either way, that the contract idea was one of them, but there's another thing he said. Anyway, if they could do that, great. I mean, if they can do that, absolutely get it done and over with, because then they could front load the money that way. But the reason why the reason why I think Correa may not come here too is, again, I'm not trying to be a negative asshole, but Detroit's not exactly a free agent destination city. People always argue about that. And I remember what it was now too. Tony Powell said something like, "Who's we? We don't want to spend the money." You're not spending the money. Fans are not spending the money. You're not. And don't make that joke about, oh, they're going to raise the prices of the hot and readies to make that happen. That's such an overplayed joke. I hate that joke. Every time I hear, I'm like, can we come up with something new instead of calling everything
add 4 more poker tables at Motor City.
Yeah,
that'd be
same
fine.
old cliche jokes. Like, no, but honestly, it's not your money. Why do you care so much? Because you think they're going to hamstring the team? No, I think the people they have there now are a lot smarter, and they're going to make things a little fiscally make sense.
Yeah, and a front-loaded deal would be awesome. It's just a matter of if you can get a player to go for that. Or you could also do a bunch of deferred money, like we've seen the Nationals do a bunch. But you never really know what players want. Like, you know, Bryce Harper took a 13-year deal with 0 opt-outs, and at a lesser average annual value, just to have the length of the contract, basically be secure till he's 40. Like, maybe that's what you need to do to get Correa. You give him a 14-year deal at $20 million a year. Like, all right.
What was it? You guys, I think Uper might know this. Remember what was the Islanders goalie's name that signed that ridiculous 14?
Was it Rick DiPietro?
Yes. Thank you, Chris.
Yeah.
Okay, there we go. Yeah.
Wow.
He signed, good call there, Chris. What was it? Did he had a 10-year deal or something like that? Or
I think it may have been longer than that. Yeah. Didn't he play? Was he from Ann Arbor, or he played in New York, or not New York?
He played for the Islanders. No, I don't think he's from the area.
Yeah.
You might be thinking
I thought maybe he played. He did.
You're thinking Pat LaFontaine, former.
Yeah, not necessarily from Ann Arbor, but like played. The.
USA Hockey.
Yeah. Sorry.
I think you might be right about that, actually. Now it's in Plymouth too. So.
Yeah, I'm looking here. Multiple hockey writers considered one of the biggest draft busts in NHL history. Oh, here we go. Yeah. In 2006, the team signed him to a groundbreaking 15-year, $67.5 million contract with a string of injuries beginning in 2008, limited to 58 NHL appearances over the next 5 seasons.
That was the dumbest. The Islanders have done a better job since Barry Trotz has been over there to clean up their act over there. But it's not an NHL podcast, of course, but still. The Islanders are far different now. They're going back to Nassau too, by the way, or Nassau, or not Nassau Coliseum in Long Island. So I know it's easy to forget that the team won 4 straight Stanley Cups in the late 70s, early 80s. Good old Billy Smith and Brian Trottier, yeah.
Mike Bossy.
Mike Bossy was boss.
Mike Gardner, or was he a Rangers?
He was Rangers.
Barry Trotz has always cracked me up for some reason. I don't know why the name makes me think
he always looks like this.
But
Trotz always looks like he's like.
We're just Trotz as a name. We're just
the name too, but he always has he looks like he's always stressed because his neck's always like this, and he's always looking up like chewing gum. And I always like when coaches in the NHL, they look at the clock like this, and they're always like this.
Yeah.
I remember Pat Burns, good old rest in peace, Pat Burns, when he was with the Canadians. Like, he was just, him and Mike Keenan back and forth were just chewing that gum to the point where it was just like dust. So I can talk hockey all day. I can talk old hockey all the time.
That's impressive. I could not talk hockey anymore after I used to pay a ton of attention to hockey, and then the last 15 years or so, I couldn't tell you much of anything. We did. We had one other question.
Yep. From the last question
from somebody. I don't know if we've ever gotten a question from Epic D3C before.
No, we have not. Thank you for the
who
question,
do you think?
Yeah,
absolutely. Who do you think we don't protect for the 40-man roster? Any predictions?
That's a good question.
Yeah, and I think we've written some articles. Who wrote an article? But was that Austin or Alan? Somebody wrote an article.
Yeah. Love that kid.
Wait, isn't that 2 different kids?
Yeah.
Oh, there's Austin. There's the drummer Austin, former SRD intern, and then we have
Alan
Austin. Alan
Pines.
Pine, sorry.
Yeah,
Alan.
and then there's
I love Austin and Alan both. Alan's been a solid
Well,
contributor.
So basically, but after today, when there were four Tigers who have been declared free agents, right? Willie Peralta, Derek Holland, Jose Urena, and Julio Teheran. I think the 40-man roster is at 41. And there are a couple of players who need to come off the 60-man still that will
Garcia's been extended on there, by the way. Ronnie Garcia.
Ronnie Garcia.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, and then Jake Rogers will be on the 60-man or 60-day, and then they'll put him back on the IL at the beginning of the year. But there are like 10, 11 players currently on the 40-man roster that they can get, remove without much worry, I think. Just going through the list, I looked, like you mentioned, Drew Carlton. I don't think he's going to stick around very long. Miguel Del Pozo, Drew Hutchison, Ian Kroll, Nivaldo Rodriguez, who never made it up to the majors. We saw down in Toledo, and I didn't think there was anything particularly special there. The Garcias, Ronnie and Brian are potential removal options. Grayson Griner or Dustin Garneau, one of those guys, if not both of them, I think is going to be off the 40-man.
Jacob Robson,
and I think we talked before about Nico Goodroom. They very well could decide to part ways with Nico Goodroom. Like I said, there's like a dozen guys who they can remove from the 40-man roster if they want to. I don't think they will remove all those guys. They'll do it by on an as needed basis.
Yep.
And I don't think there are a ton of people they have to add to the 40-man. We talked before that they're certainly going to add Reese Olson because they just traded for him and he's one of their top 15 prospects. And almost certainly going to add Cody Clemens, I think, even if they don't, I don't know, even if he's not a piece of the future, I think they're going to add him just because he's a AAA guy and a middle infielder, well, second baseman, right fielder, third baseman, whatever. I think they'll add him. But after that, I don't know. I mean, they do have like
Garrett
a small
Hill.
army. What's that? Yeah, there's a small army of pitchers that they could add, like Garrett Hill, you mentioned.
Fernander.
Travis Fernander, Paul Richan, if they want to, he kind of disappeared this year. I think he was hurt.
Yeah.
Logan Shore, if they want to. Angel De Jesus, Kader Montero, Carlos Guzman. They have a bunch of guys they could add. I think Wilco Hernandez is Rule 5 eligible again, even though he's coming off Tommy John surgery. Elvin Rodriguez. So there are a bunch of dudes they could add. I just don't feel like they're going to need to. None of them strike me as guys who might get sniped in the Rule 5 draft. So I don't know. I imagine that they'll have, like you said, I think it was last week or maybe 2 weeks ago, they'll probably keep one spot open for sure for the Rule 5 draft just because you can always take a guy. It never hurts. There's no real harm in it. Yep. And then after that, I think they'll just kind of add and subtract guys as needed in free agency. So it'll be interesting to watch. We talked before about like these other teams cycling through players. It somehow this year the Tigers ended up with a lot more chaff on the 40-man roster again.
A lot.
Yeah. And not to denigrate these players, but they're guys who they can be added and dropped without fear of losing, I think.
It is. Nico Goodroom is an interesting name. I mean, is he Rasputin? Does he get one more? Keep coming back to life here on him. It's going to be, good old Nico. You probably should challenge yourself to get better than Nico Goodroom, but he shows just enough every year to keep him out.
I mean, there's always been a lot to like about Nico Goodroom. He's just his inability to make consistent contact from the left side is his big bugaboo. And the strikeouts, because he'll walk at a decent clip. He's got speed. He's got raw power. He's shown the ability to be an above average defender at shortstop. And he's versatile. He play other positions. It's just, you can't really play that guy every day if you're trying to contend. At least not every day at one position.
Yeah.
I mean, it's in terms of even like the minor league pitchers too. Some will be interesting enough to keep on the 40-man roster. But I mean, I do find it curious that Fernander is pitching the AFL, so maybe they're showing him off as hey, or something to that effect. Or I don't know. I mean, I thought that was an interesting decision because you look at some of the, but then again, I thought about it even more. I'm like, well, they don't really have a lot of minor league arms right now out of the bullpen that could help out because a lot of them that were up were minor league free agents. And in terms of homegrown farm talent, Zach Hess, I thought, took a step back. I mean, you saw that. I thought we thought sure he could start the season in Erie based on where he was pitching at in camp, and he started the season down in West Michigan, and so we'll see. I mean, that's a question that will be getting answers for November 18th, I believe. That's when they have to make a decision on the 40-man, and so that's not too far away.
Yeah, and there's still the kind of unresolved. I don't know if it ultimately will matter, but Eric De La Rosa, Fangraphs lists him as not eligible for the Rule 5 draft until next year. But every other player from the 2018 draft that Eric De La Rosa was from is Rule 5 eligible, according to Fangraphs. Everyone who wasn't a high school player. And De La Rosa did come from a junior college, but he wasn't like 19. He was older. He was college junior aged. So I don't really know. I feel like that's a mistake on Fangraphs' part, unless there's some obscure rule that I don't know about.
Yeah.
And I think they like De La Rosa enough that they might protect him, but he's not a guy that I would really be concerned about getting taken and sticking on another team's roster all year. Maybe a bottom feeder team, but probably not. So I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, he's of anybody this year who has improved themselves in terms of stock, in terms of minor league rankings and what have you. De La Rosa's up there. Him, Bobrisky definitely have made an impression where, I mean, Bobrisky came out of nowhere. If you told me that he was going to be the pitcher of the year, you're nuts. And so, no, honestly, go ahead, Chris.
Well, I think Brisky's first start of the year was a disaster. And I think I texted in our little group chat, you guys, like, oh, what a disaster Brisky is. What a bum. And then, like, every start after that was pretty great. So, it's kind of funny. I think Walter asked another question down there. Did you see that?
Yeah, I did. So, this is the last question is, and I you know what? Those three players, Walter, I would love to see them in the Tigers uniform. Because I like Marcus Stroman over Justin Verlander. Big time.
So, yeah, for listeners.
Oh, by the way, the Mets have to make the decision about him tomorrow by Friday.
Stroman?
Yeah, Stroman. So go ahead. I'm sorry.
So, for listeners, Walter Briggs asked, is Simeon, Stroman, and Taylor too much to ask for this year? I would like to see. I don't think it is. I mean, that's Stroman and Simeon are probably going to get $20+ million a year. And Taylor is probably going to be somewhere in the 15 range, I would think.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we've adding about $50 million in salary this year. That's 55. And with Barnhart, you're talking
8.
Yeah, so another, basically $60 million. That would have the Tigers payroll at like $140 million, right? Which is seems totally doable. It's not our money. I'd be happy to have them go up to $400 million, but we're just guessing on what they'd be willing to spend. I think that's doable. It's just a matter of, do those guys want to come here, and is that really enough to get them? Because I think there will be several bidders for Simeon and Stroman and Taylor. It's going to have to give them the years or the dollars that they want. So
I like Walter's list quite a bit. I've been on the Simeon train for a long time, but that's, and not to be a broken record, that's why I like Marte a little more than I like Chris Taylor, because of the ability to lead off and steal 40 bags and hit it with a little bit of power. I think they could afford him. I think at Marte's age, it won't take a 5 or 6 year deal to get him. I think you can get him on 4 years and somewhere around 80 million. And I think that's doable. And I think your outfield and your lineup is immediately better. But, if it ended up being Stroman over Verlander, I'm a Verlander guy, but obviously Stroman has shown the ability to get by in the American League East. So he'd probably do just fine in the AL Central. I think that'd be a great signing.
Yeah, I know a lot of Mets fans want him back. He was a consummate professional, and he
tweets like a lot. We'd love that.
Yeah, he does tweet a lot, and a lot of his opinions I like a lot. And there's one today that I'm not going to get into because I might piss off some people with it. But anyway,
I did see one. He tweeted something about how he would never shave his dreadlocks for anyone.
Yeah,
It's
was
like,
an
well,
awesome
okay, so
comment,
he's not going to the Yankees. All right, cool.
Yeah.
Well, I think there should be more. It's absolutely ridiculous that the Yankees require players to like be clean cut. Like, what nonsense is this?
It's the 1920s. See,
Yeah.
it's yeah. But a lot of people do it because it's a chance to play with the Yankees, and I you have to respect that. But at the same time, it seems a little old. It's like it's something like, for example, like Connie Mack was the last manager to wear a shirt and tie in a business suit when he managed. And I think that actually is pretty cool because I love baseball managers that have that, like what soccer coaches do. They're always dressed up to the nines. It'd be sweet to see, AJ Hinch in like some pinstripe suit or something, but that's not gonna happen. They like being in. There's a certain thing about being in uniform. I totally get it. Look, I mean, even in softball, beer league softball, I was a player manager, and I got all toke. And so I was, I wore a C on my chest. I was like, come on. And you're right. Steinbrenner nostalgia. That's definitely for sure. I mean, he strictly enforced that, except for Don Manley had a mustache, though, right? Don Manley.
I think they were cool with mustaches or like neatly trimmed beards or things like they just don't want long hair and sideburns. It's absurd to me that you would. Yeah. You're paying these guys tens of millions of dollars. I mean, I guess you could kind of expect them to do what you want to, but like, there are bound to be a handful of guys who are like, I don't want to play for you because I don't want to do like, like think back to being in school and like, I don't know, did you have a dress code, Rogelio? I know you went to a Catholic school, right?
Oh yeah, I had a dress code all through from first grade to 12th grade, and haircut. I actually got suspended in 5th grade because my brother and I went to our normal barber, which was in Southwest Detroit, and we had a fade that had a line in it, and our principal, who was a nun, flipped out about it, and we couldn't go back until we got our haircuts fixed. But my brother and I thought we were kind of ostracized for it because in reality, it wasn't even that noticeable. So we had to get a different haircut, and we were never allowed to shave it too close or do anything funky. I mean, this is right now the longest my hair's ever been, and I would not be able to pull that off in elementary school. And so that was something that always bothered me. And so, I've dealt with that. Or it was in high school. Well, the high school I went to, by the way, had a different dress code until my freshman year because they got rid of like striped lines because they wanted to be associated with gangs. We're in Allen Park, Michigan. If you know anything about Allen Park, Allen Park does not have gangs. It was stupid.
Hey, wait a minute. Interesting. So, the official policy: all players, coaches, and male executives are forbidden to display any facial hair other than mustaches, except for religious reasons. And scalp hair may not be grown below the collar. Long sideburns and mutton chops are not specifically banned.
Mutton chops.
So I'm surprised somebody hasn't gone like, I'm a Muslim. You just throw like a big crazy. I look like a big ZZ Top beard or like a New York Taliban.
That would not go popular right there.
No, but my whole point was like I remember like threats of a dress code being like a big deal when I was a kid.
Oh yeah.
Like in me not wanting to ever entertain the idea of going to a private school because of dress codes. So I have to feel like there are baseball players too. Like, no, it'd be cool to play for the Yankees, but I'm not going to come play for you if I have to not have a beard or have to not have cornrows or whatever. So whatever. It's cool that Marcus Stroman said that out loud.
Yeah, for sure.
Anyway.
So on that note, though, I think was that it, Chris, on the question wise?
That's all I saw. Yeah.
All right.
No more in the Here, no segments, and we went an hour and 45 minutes. How about that?
And that's what I'm saying. Like, it doesn't matter what time of year it is going to be. It's going to be a typical show. It's just no segments because, quite frankly, there's no real baseball to talk about outside of off-season stuff. But starting next week, like I said, we're going to enter. For anybody who's watching us on YouTube, if there's a certain topic each week you like to talk about that's not baseball related, like movies or music, we did that last year, the year before when the season was shortened by COVID. Actually, was last year, then we can do that again. I love when we get listener interaction. So if you're listening to the podcast, awesome.
That'd be
Give
fun.
us some feedback and let us
Sure,
know, because
yeah.
we're here for the people. We are here for the people. And I like I said, when we get the more interaction, the funner it is. And I always like
Yeah,
interaction
we-
with people on Twitter. I don't want to be a gatekeeper and tell you how to leave a comment in the blog, because that's stupid.
And we did some of the if people have suggestions for teams, older teams to look back at, we used to do
Yeah.
that too, and that was kind of fun.
Yeah, we looked back at the 86 Mets last year. That was a lot of fun. We did look
86
back.
Mets, yeah, we looked at
That'd be cool.
Yeah,
we looked back at a number of teams. I think the 2001 Diamondbacks.
Yeah, the what Tiger team we look at? 87 or 84? I can't remember. It was the 84 Tigers, right?
I think so.
Yeah.
Was that a good year?
I don't know, maybe. I mean, bless you, boys.
As I
or
understand,
something like that.
Big Brother was watching.
Yeah. So some sort of crazy song came out and bless you, boys, or something like that. I don't know. It's crazy.
Yeah.
But no, it's we will definitely. There's a lot of teams we can look at too that are non-contenders. One of my favorite Tiger teams that I look back on with a certain sadness is 1996 Tigers, which had the worst ERA of any team of all time. And I've done an article about it, but the 81 Tigers, and that was because they got screwed over by the strike. And that was one of the, in terms of on paper, you have a really good young core of Tiger players there.
Yep.
And that's a team that I believe, was it Jason Thompson was gone by then, right? Though, right?
Yeah,
Cooper?
he was.
Yeah.
He was in Pittsburgh.
Yeah. And then Steve Kemp was traded the following year for Chet Lemon, or was Chet Lemon's first year in 81?
I think Lemon was there for that team.
Yeah. And Walter, yeah, you're awesome, dude. So I love our YouTube audience. It's growing every week. And again, if you want to also contribute to our Patreon, that goes to new gear, which I wanted to show people what the new gear looks like here in a second. We did purchase something for next year for the interviews when I'm on the road for the minor league. And Chris, go ahead and kill time for 2 seconds while I pull that out.
Oh, well, I went back and looked at this 81 Tigers team just for fun. And it's interesting. It looks like Lance Parrish led the team with 10 home runs. I know it was a shortened season, but still 10 home runs in 96 games doesn't seem like a ton, but they did. Kemp was there, Walkenfuss, Kirk Gibson, 24-year-old Kirk Gibson, Richie Hebner in the house,
the grave digger,
Champ Summers. What the hell is that?
Sounds like a fake name, right?
Stan Poppy, I like that. Alan Trammell had 2 home runs, hit 258. Al Cowan.
Wait. Let me tell. Wait. Without looking, because Chris, I'm not looking at it right now.
Mm-hmm.
Aurelio Lopez was the closer, right? He led the team in saves.
Kevin Saucier, yeah.
Oh, the guy with the funky
hot sauce.
Yeah, hot sauce. Yeah.
Aurelio Lopez had 3 saves.
Because he was a closer, I think, in 82 or 83, I want to say.
He did finish 19 games. Saucier, 1.65 ERA and 13 saves. That's not too bad.
Oh, he had a good year. He actually, the final weekend in Milwaukee, I believe he struggled. He had a wonderful season until they needed him that last weekend. I think the Brewers got him. But Saucier had a good year, no question about it. He was.
Well, so here's an issue, I think. Looking back, this is just an impromptu look at the 81 Tigers. So here's the rotation. You got 26-year-old Jack Morris went 14-7 with a 3.05 ERA in 25 starts. Not bad, 15 complete games. You got 31-year-old Milt Wilcox went 12-9 with a 3.03 ERA. Pretty good. You have 22-year-old Dan Petrie who went 10-9 with a 3 flat ERA.
Mm-hmm.
That's a pretty good 1-2-3. The number 4 starter, Dan Schatzeder.
Sure.
Who went 6-8 with a 6.06 ERA.
Dan Schatzeder had a great start to his career in Montreal. They traded him for Ron LaFleur.
That's right.
And I thought, Dan Schatzeder was good in Montreal, and we used to get Montreal baseball up in the UP, and I watched him pitch. I thought, oh man, he's going to be great. And no, not so much.
Yeah. Well, he was okay in 1980. A 4.02 ERA in 192 innings. That'll work. But yeah, after that, not so much. But he did win a World Series with the 1987 Twins. So screw that guy.
I think he was a rookie by then.
So did Juan Berner too.
Yeah.
Who's Dave Rosema was not starting? Wait, was he injured in 81?
Rosema made 9 starts, but also I picked up 3 saves. He looked like he finished. He looked like he was just kind of a swingman, I guess.
What was the year he hurt himself with the karate kick
against the Twins? I think that was 83 or 82.
Okay.
I think. Pretty sure it was like 82 or 83. I recall that I saw the highlights of that. It was one of the most fascinating kicks I've ever seen in Rosemont. Yeah, but I really want to throw this out. We'll talk about the 81 Tigers another time, but I wanted to. We saved our money from the Patreon, and we did get I think we had 1 donation on PayPal, and we got the vlogger kit. So this will be on our iPhones next year. We got another camera that's, or not a camera rather, but another little microphone's coming with us soon. So I want to thank everybody who contributed. This is it. I just wanted to show you it goes back into the podcast. I have a new editing software too that I'm putting in my own money in that it's helping out, and so everybody that does that, it goes back into the show. We spent some money on getting shirts for some listeners out there. I'm talking about the report, so we're just grateful you guys are listening and participating, honestly. And so give thanks because it is Thanksgiving and No Shave November. So if you're in that thing, so that's why
Contender November.
Yes, there's also Contender November at MotorCityBengals.com. Check out all the great articles. Check out Uper's article, Chris's 2 articles on the Twins and the Royals. I also will have a piece coming out here in the next couple of days. And again, Alan's been off to a good start running. So if you check out his stuff, really appreciate it. And then next week, fingers crossed on this guest. I'll tell Uper after we get off the podcast, but so that's going to be.
It might rhyme with Uper.
Yeah, exactly. So or a former Milwaukee Brewer outfielder.
Nice.
Anyway, so there's a lot of baseball smart folks out there. They'll probably figure it out. But anyways,
great.
So have a good week, everybody. We'll see you next Thursday. Same bat time, same bat channel. Have a good week.